The word raku is a Japanese word which means or suggests enjoyment, pleasure, happiness, contentment or comfort. It was first used in 1584 when the Japanese tea master Toyotomi Hideyoshi presented a potter Tanaka Chojiro with a seal inscribed with the character meaning Raku, and this became the family name from that point onwards. The seal was used to mark the first Raku pieces after Hideyoshi commissioned Tanaka Chojiro, who incidentally was a Korean potter who had emigrated to Japan, to make handmade tea bowls, which would be used in the traditional Japanese tea ceremony. The Raku family has continued to produce Raku ware ever since. The Raku style, pioneered and mastered by Ujiro, has been passed down through the ages and generations to the current and 15th Raku family. In addition, a number of Japanese artists and potters have studied at the Raku kiln and mastered the technique over those many centuries. It is important to know that Japanese raku ware is handmade and not wheel-thrown. There are two kinds of Japanese raku: red ware, which is glazed with lead glazes, low-fired and traditionally taken out of a red-hot kiln and allowed to cool naturally in the air or by putting it in water. And black raku, which is glazed with feldspathic glazes containing several metallic minerals and fired to stoneware temperatures and allowed to cool in the kiln. Both types of Japanese raku bear no resemblance to the Western version of raku, which I will talk about later in this video. Now let's examine some of the early traditional Japanese raku wares, of which there are many examples to be found on various websites on this subject. The colour of red raku is obtained from an ochre slip, a lead glaze and fast firing in a charcoal or wood kiln. The salmon red and subtle grey flashings often achieved with this technique was and is much appreciated in the tea ceremony. Black raku is obtained with a special pulverised rock glaze, which probably has a high concentration of metal oxides such as iron, copper and manganese, and is fired slowly at a high temperature and then cooled slowly. Neither type of Japanese raku is smoked. And I will complete this brief talk about Japanese raku with these delightful images. Raku pottery was first discovered at the very beginning of the 20th century by the esteemed British studio potter Bernard Leach. At a very early stage in his career, he went to Japan, and his encounter with Japanese potters and raku in 1911 changed his direction in pottery making and possibly the direction of studio pottery making in the United Kingdom. He worked in Japan for several years, and on his return to England at his St. Ives Pottery, he introduced raku to the English studio potters. His method of making raku was the same as the one I have described for Japanese raku. The other modern method of raku pottery making was introduced to the West in the United States by Paul Soldner in the late 1950s. Therefore, it is also called American raku, but it differs from Japanese raku in these ways. It is usually fired at higher temperatures and glazed with glazes containing metallic pigments of iron, copper, manganese and chrome. The wares are also removed from the kiln at the red hot stage, but in the Western method they are placed into a metal container containing combustible material such as paper, leaves, straw and sawdust, which immediately catches fire. Then the lid is put on, which produces a very smoky atmosphere, which, due to intense reduction of oxygen in the air in the container, it has the same effect on the glazes as does the smoking process described in my recent video on lusterware. After a short while, the pots are taken out of the container and put into cold water and cleaned to reveal the luster effects achieved. But the resulting glazes effects can be quite startling. Raku pottery is still one of Japan's cornerstone arts, but the modern version has exploded in popularity around the world since its introduction by Paul Soldner in the 1950s. Now let's have a look at some of the wares produced by well-known raku potters. There is another form of raku firing which has the rather racy name of naked raku. It differs from the method already described for a couple of reasons. The naked part refers to the fact that there is no glaze involved in this method. There are two different processes. In the first one, the bisque pots are coated with a thick slip and refired. During the firing, the slip will crack or craze, but it does not adhere to the pot. The pot is removed from the very hot kiln and placed in the container with combustible material, and the smoke penetrates through the cracks in the slip to reach the surface of the pot underneath. The slip flakes off after the smoking to reveal a huge variety of very interesting black decorations on the surface of the pot. Sometimes the pots are coloured in various ways prior to this process to give extremely pleasant results. The other type of naked raku decoration happens when the pot is removed from the red-hot kiln and things like feathers and hair are applied to the hot surface of the pot. They burn off and leave very interesting decorations on the surface of the pot. Because the pots are not glazed, they can be finished either by burnishing the pot prior to the firing or by waxing or applying an acrylic glaze finish after the firing. And here are just a few more examples. And I think the most interesting thing about modern raku is the surprise element and the infinite variety of results that can be achieved by this fascinating field of pottery making. And thank you once again for watching.